In a kingdom of glittering gold and whispered legends, a princess with a heart of ice has broken every man who dared to woo her. But what happens when a stranger arrives not to win her love, but to challenge her very soul? This is a story of a legendary challenge, a single night that changes everything, and a terrible price hidden within a prophecy that no one saw coming. I like to realize that our community covers all corners of the world. One quick question: from which corner of the planet are you watching me? Write your country below, and let's see how far we've come together. Princess Lyra was the sole heir to the throne of Xanthia, a kingdom blessed by the sun, known for its sun-drenched spires and bountiful harvests. From the moment she drew her first breath, it was clear she was a living myth, a figure destined for songs and stories. Her beauty was a thing of profound, almost painful perfection. Court poets were said to weep for the lack of words to truly capture the starlight in her eyes or the grace in her movements. The king and queen treasured her, and the entire kingdom adored her from afar. Merchants would travel from distant dusty lands not for trade, but just to catch a fleeting glimpse of the princess on her balcony. Everyone spoke of how magnificent she was, but in the taverns and tea rooms, they also shared a whispered riddle. "Princess Lyra is different," they would murmur over their cups. No prince, no knight, not a single soul has ever stirred her heart. And it was true. No matter how many brave, handsome, or clever men tried, not one could earn so much as a second glance. Why? Well, that was the greatest mystery in all of Xanthia. Her father, King Theron, was a mighty ruler whose will could command armies. Yet he found himself powerless against the quiet defiance of his own daughter. He loved her dearly, but he grew weary of the endless, humiliating parade of suitors. Strong warriors with chests full of medals, wealthy merchants with ships in every port, wise scholars from ancient universities, they all arrived with hope in their eyes and left with their pride in tatters. One by one they walked away, defeated. The king could no longer ignore the murmurs that snaked through his court. "Why does the princess reject every man?" they asked. "Is she cursed? Is her heart made of stone?" Finally, his patience frayed. King Theron summoned his advisors and made a grand proclamation. "Let it be known," his voice boomed through the great hall, "any man who can win my daughter's heart shall have half my kingdom and my favor. But if he fails, he must leave Xanthia in exile, his name erased from our memory." The news spread like wildfire, and soon a new wave of men arrived, each one convinced he was the exception, the one destined to claim the princess and her kingdom. The first was a great warrior, a behemoth of a man clad in obsidian steel, his voice a rumbling thunder. "I have defeated wild beasts with my bare hands," he boasted, his chest puffed with pride. "Surely I am strong enough to conquer the heart of one woman." Lyra looked at him from her throne, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "And do you believe a woman's heart is just another beast to be wrestled into submission?" The warrior laughed, a loud, booming sound. "Of course. What else is there but strength?" Lyra descended a single step, her gaze never leaving his. "Then tell me, warrior, why do your hands shake?" He looked down, and to his utter shock, his hands, the same hands that had slain monsters and wielded great swords, were trembling. A deep, primal fear filled his soul, a fear he couldn't name. Without another word, he turned and fled, his broad shoulders slumped in shame. The court gasped. Another had fallen. Next came a rich merchant draped in silks from the Jade Empire, his fingers choked with rings. He bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the floor. "I will give you all the wealth in the world, princess," he promised. "Silks, jewels, spices from lands you have only dreamed of. You shall never want for anything." Lyra simply shook her head, her expression one of weary pity. What value does a mountain of gold have, merchant, to a heart that is already a vault, sealed from the inside? The merchant opened his mouth, but no answer came. He knew in that moment that he had already lost. Head bowed, he turned and walked away. So the parade of men continued. One by one they came, and one by one they failed. Some left in a storm of rage, others in a flood of tears. None could fathom why the princess was so unreachable. The elders of the land began to worry, their faces etched with concern. "If she does not choose a husband soon, the gods may grow angry," they warned the king. "The harvests will fail, the rivers will dry up." Princess Lyra watched from her seat. Her chin lifted, her lips curved in that familiar, cutting amusement, as another suitor stumbled from her chambers, his face pale. The court fell silent, watching the mighty warrior who had promised to claim her. He couldn't even meet her eyes as he hurried past. She did not hide her quiet laughter. "They come, they boast, they fall," she murmured, her voice soft enough to sound almost gentle, but sharp enough to slice through the hall's tension. "Men are weak." The words rippled through the palace like a stone tossed into a still pond. The elders exchanged weary glances. The king clenched his jaw, the knuckles of his hand turning white. He had heard those words from her lips too many times. The whispers in the court grew louder. "She mocks them all. She is cursed. No man will ever be enough for her." King Theron slammed his gilded staff against the ground, his patience finally shattered. His voice rose above the murmurs, shaking with desperation. "Enough! If my daughter does not choose a husband, the gods will turn against us. The land will suffer. The people will suffer. You must choose." But Lyra only smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Then send me a man worth choosing." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and ominous as a coming storm. And at that very moment, the great oak doors of the hall creaked open. A man stepped inside. He did not enter like the others. He did not bow, did not lower his gaze, did not wear the fine clothes of a prince or the heavy armor of a warrior. He walked with the unnerving stillness of a hunter, with the fluid grace of a shadow slipping through the night. His robes, the color of a starless midnight, whispered against the marble floor as he moved. The court fell utterly silent. Lyra's fingers curled against the carved arms of her chair. The man did not speak. He only looked at her, not with the usual adoration or awe, but with something else. Something deep and unreadable. The king's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Who are you?" The man did not turn his head. His gaze remained locked on Lyra. "Kaelen," he said simply. It was a name that meant nothing, yet it sent a shiver through the air. "Kaelen of where?" the king pressed, his voice demanding. "Nowhere," he replied. A nervous murmur ran through the crowd. A man with no land, no title, no kingdom? What right did he have to stand before their princess? The king's frown deepened. "And you believe you are worthy of my daughter?" Kaelen finally shifted his gaze to the king. "I do not come to prove my worth," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I come to see if she is worthy of mine." A collective gasp sucked the air from the hall. No man had ever spoken such words, not in this palace, not in the presence of the king. Lyra's smile faded completely. For the first time, a suitor had not arrived with gifts, had not recited poetry, had not sworn to worship at her feet. He had come to test her. Her fingers tightened on the carved wood of her throne. She studied him, searching for the foolish arrogance, the brittle pride that always lived in the hearts of men. But Kaelen stood still, his expression a mask of calm. There was no nervous shifting, no beads of sweat on his brow. He did not fidget. He did not falter. She leaned forward slightly, her voice a low murmur. "You think you are different from the others." His mouth curled into something that was almost a smirk. "I do not think," he said. "I know." Her heart pounded once, a slow, deep thud against her ribs. The king leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming against the armrest. He looked at his daughter, then at the man before her. He exhaled sharply. "The challenge remains," he said. "You will spend one night in the princess's chambers. If you leave as all the others have, you will never set foot in this land again." Kaelen inclined his head slightly, agreed. The court erupted in whispers again. "He will fail. He must." The others were stronger than him, richer, and they all fell. Lyra rose from her seat, her eyes locked on Kaelen. "There is still time to walk away," she murmured, her voice both a quiet invitation and a dire warning. Kaelen did not move. Lyra's breath came slow and steady, but something unfamiliar stirred deep inside her. She turned without another word, stepping toward the grand doors of her chambers. She did not look back. She did not need to. She could feel him following her, his silent presence a weight on the air. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if she had made a mistake. But it was too late. The doors closed behind them, and this time, something felt different. The silence between them was not empty. It was a living thing, thick and heavy, pressing against Lyra's skin like the heat of a slow-burning fire. The very air in the chamber felt charged, waiting. Every man before Kaelen had rushed to prove himself, had stumbled over his own pride, had cracked beneath the weight of her piercing gaze. But he did nothing. Lyra was not used to stillness. She lifted her chin, letting that small, practiced smirk curl on her lips. "You hesitate." Kaelen said nothing. His eyes, dark as the deepest part of the night sky, never left hers. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Or perhaps you fear what will happen if you try." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You think too much of yourself, princess." The words sent a sharp, unfamiliar jolt through her chest. It wasn't an insult, not exactly, but no man had ever dared to speak to her with such calm dismissal. She stepped closer, her movement slow and deliberate, letting the golden cuffs on her wrists catch the dim torchlight. "You do not bow, you do not speak when spoken to, you do not fear me. Tell me, Kaelen, what is it that you do?" Kaelen tilted his head, watching her the way a lion watches its prey. "I wait." Lyra's smirk twitched, faltering for just a breath. "For what?" "For you to stop pretending." A slow, pulsing heat spread through her veins. He was playing a game whose rules she did not know. Every man before him had either groveled or crumbled. None had stood so still, so sure. She stepped closer still, closing the space between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And what, precisely, do you think I am pretending?" Kaelen did not move, did not even blink. His voice was a low, steady rumble when he spoke. "That you are in control." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She had spent her life making men doubt themselves, pushing them to their limits, watching them fall apart under her scrutiny. Their need to prove themselves to her was their weakness, but Kaelen did not doubt himself. He was not here to prove a thing. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She exhaled, slow and measured. "I see now. You are not like the others." Kaelen's smirk returned. "No." She began to circle him slowly, letting her fingers graze the dark fabric of his cloak. "Men are predictable. They boast, they beg, they break." Her voice was soft, almost teasing. "But you, I have yet to decide what you are." Kaelen's voice did not waver. "Then decide." She stopped directly behind him, her lips close to his ear. "If I did, the game would be over too soon." Kaelen turned his head slightly, just enough to catch her gaze over his shoulder. "And that is what you fear, isn't it?" Lyra stiffened for a single telling moment, long enough for him to notice. His smirk deepened. A pulse of heat, sharp and electric, shot through her chest. She had spent her life testing men, but for the very first time she realized with a jolt that she was the one being tested. She stepped away, forcing a slow breath to steady herself. "You carry no weapons. I do not need them. She lifted an eyebrow. No riches to offer? Gold cannot buy what you seek. She turned to fully face him now, the game shifting again. And what is it you think I seek, Kaelen? He stepped forward, just a single, deliberate step, but it was enough to make the world tilt beneath her feet. He raised a hand, his fingers, brushing against the heavy golden cuff at her wrist. It was a touch as light as a moth's wing, yet it seared her skin like a brand. Lyra's breath hitched. She had spent her life watching men fall, but now, standing before Kaelen, she felt something fundamental shift inside her. Something dangerous. Kaelen's voice was quieter now, a low murmur meant only for her. You have spent your life searching for a man who would not fall before you. His fingers lingered on her wrist for a moment longer, a silent punctuation before he pulled away. And now you have found one. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. She had always been the one in control, the one who set the pace, who pulled the strings, but Kaelen was not waiting to be tested. He was testing her. The realization sent another wave of heat through her, sharp and disorienting. She stepped back, trying to reclaim her breath, her composure. You assume much. Kaelen only smirked. For the first time, Lyra felt unsure, and she hated the feeling. She turned away, her voice sharper now, a weapon to regain her footing. We shall see if you are as certain by sunrise. Kaelen nodded once. We shall. The room was quiet again. Too quiet. The air between them burned with unspoken challenges, thick and pulsing. Lyra clenched her hands into fists at her sides. She would not be undone by this man. She would not be thrown off balance. She lifted her chin once more, her mask of cool control sliding back into place. You are dismissed for now. Rest while you can. Kaelen gave her one final knowing look, his smirk never fading. Then, without another word, he turned and walked to a far corner of the chamber. Lyra let out a slow, shaky breath, pressing a hand against her chest. Her heart was still racing. She clenched her jaw. No, she would not be the one to fall. But somewhere deep inside her, a whisper of doubt coiled like a snake. Little did she know, she already had. The great doors of the palace opened with a slow, grinding groan. The people of Xanthia held their breath, a collective silence falling over the great hall. Everyone had been waiting since dawn. Would Kaelen walk out like the others, shaking, scared, running away? Or had something changed? Then he stepped out, tall, calm, his dark robe still resting perfectly on his shoulders. His face was still strong, his gaze unwavering. He looked just as he had before, unafraid. But something was different. Lyra followed him out. She did not smirk. She did not hold her head high with that familiar air of disdain. Her eyes were steady, but they did not hold their usual fire. The people gasped. The princess has been tamed? Someone whispered in shock. It cannot be, another voice cried. She is different. The whispers grew into a wave of sound, filling the great hall. The princess who had always laughed at men, the princess who had never let anyone win, had finally been claimed. King Theron watched them closely, his eyes wide. He had never seen his daughter look like this. Kaelen, he said at last, his voice deep and proud. You have done what no man before you could. As promised, half my kingdom is yours. Kaelen did not smile. He did not bow. He did not even move. Lyra's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Kaelen slowly turned toward her, and his dark, knowing eyes held a new emotion. Sorrow. She felt her breath catch. Why did this feel like it wasn't the end? Then Kaelen spoke, his voice calm, but his words were heavy with ancient weight. The prophecy, he said, looking at the king, never promised a reward. Only a price. The whispers stopped. King Theron frowned. What do you mean? Kaelen lifted his hands, and then Lyra saw it. His fingers. They were fading. The tips of his hands, his arms. They were turning to shimmering dust. Lyra's heart seized. No! The court gasped. People stumbled back in terror. The elders whispered in horrified understanding. "The gods demand a sacrifice. The man who tames the princess's heart must vanish from this world." Kaelen exhaled, his gaze fixed on her. His face was calm, but Lyra could see it now. He had known. He had known all along. She shook her head, her voice sharp with a desperation she had never known. "No, you cannot leave." Kaelen gave her a small, sad smile. "It was always the price." Her hands curled into fists. "I will not allow it." His form was breaking apart now, his body dissolving piece by piece like a sandcastle against the tide. Lyra lunged forward, her breath heavy, her heart racing. She reached out, grabbing for his wrist, but she felt nothing. It was like trying to grasp smoke, to hold the wind. Panic, cold and absolute, rose inside her. She had spent her life watching men run from her. She had laughed when they failed. But now, for the first time, she was the one begging. "Kaelen," she whispered, her voice breaking. His smirk returned, but it was softer this time, tinged with regret. Then he was gone, vanished. The court stood frozen. No one spoke. Lyra did not move. She did not cry. She did not fall to her knees. But inside, something cracked, something deep and irreparable. The days passed, then weeks, then months. The kingdom returned to a semblance of normal. The people spoke of Kaelen as a legend, a ghost story to tell their children. But Lyra was not the same. She walked through the halls like a phantom, her beauty now a hollow shell. She did not smile. She did not laugh. She sat on her throne, watching the world move around her, no longer a part of it. She had spent her life untouched, untamed, unclaimed. Now she knew the exquisite agony of love and the desolate finality of loss. At night, when the palace was hushed and still, she would go to the great hall and stand in the place where Kaelen had vanished. She would touch the empty air where he had been, remembering the sound of his voice, the steadiness of his eyes. And then one night, as a cool wind rushed through the palace corridors, she heard it. A whisper, clear as a bell, carried on the breeze. "Did you not say men were weak?" Her breath caught. She turned sharply, her eyes scanning the empty hall. She was alone. Yet deep inside, she knew. Kaelen was gone, but the gods had not let him go completely. Perhaps this was their final, cruelest curse. They had given her exactly what she longed for, and then they had taken it away, leaving only an echo to haunt her forever. So I ask you, what do you think of Lyra's story? Do you think this was a curse or a gift in cruel disguise? Do you think a part of Kaelen is still with her, or is she destined to be alone forever? And would you keep holding on to something even if it kept slipping through your fingers? Tell us what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and share if you were moved by their story.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.